Welcome. I'm here today with Dave Noonan from RSM. He's the national lead for private equity strategy at the firm. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome, Tomas. Nice to be here.
So what I'd love to start with is, Dave, maybe give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been in this position with the firm for going on 8 years now. For the first 7, I have led our private equity consulting practice, really focused on value creation for our private equity firms throughout their investment life cycle. For the 4 years prior, I worked closely with the SAP private equity team for a reseller out of Bielefeld, Germany, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and did a fair amount of carve-out work and optimization work on SAP. And for 5 years prior to that, I was the CEO of a process automation software firm in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I have about 25 or so years ahead of that in various technology and professional services leadership roles.
This vlog is about the intersection of value creation and technology, and you definitely had experience with both. So let's talk about the crisis just so we get it out of the way. What are the kind of acrobatics and activities you've seen in the crisis in and outside of private equity?
Yeah, I think across the board, there's been such a profound, importance put on just being able to function in a remote setting, having the infrastructure and the technology and the digital infrastructure in place to be able to support that. And I think the companies that have done that well and were prepared, have fared very well. I think the firm that I'm with was well positioned to support that, and we really didn't miss a beat. But the importance of having accurate data, and customer data available, through that digital infrastructure is tantamount to being able to sustain business in this kind of crazy time.
Yeah, I'm sure you and I both watched as our clients and companies we interact with reacted differently. And some did really well, some struggled. Do you have a hypothesis as what the leaders did better than the laggards in the crisis?
Yeah, I've kind of seen, the leaders have just promoted a culture and created an environment of agility, right? The ability to move. If you look at microbreweries being able to all of a sudden pivot and make hand sanitizer, in the same facility, and Ford, pivoting to manufacture ventilators. That doesn't happen without, I think a leadership mindset of being agile and nimble in the marketplace, but really having a framework, a technology framework to be able to make those kind of changes on the fly. It really says a lot for those folks. And the ones that haven't had that kind of vision haven't had the same level of success and have had a real difficult time, kind of adopting to the new normal.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a general talk about how digital transformation accelerated, and I think it's partially true, but I think some companies just fell further behind, like you're saying. And I noticed, like, one of the companies I noticed, Domino's, right? It's right off the bat, in like a couple of days, they completely changed the delivery model, and the local pizzeria could never even take orders online. What do you think? What are the technologies you think are advancing as a result of the crisis, and what are the things that maybe are more sidelined?
Well, I think for me, the things that have really gained an adoption and really out of necessity, quite frankly, are things that help digital workers be more effective and really help companies operate in more of an automated environment. Things like AI and RPA and tools that just drive measurable productivity and the ability to kind of conduct business without human interaction has been significantly accelerated and really have allowed people to to operate in ways that they never thought they could. And I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going back.
One thing I thought about is you worked a lot with private equity firms over the last decade. Have you noticed different behavior when it comes to their deployment of technology in the crisis?
I think there's again, you used the word acceleration. I think across the board, this whole thing has just propagated, the need for an accelerated deployment of technology to prepare yourself for things that, and there's probably things coming about that we haven't, we're still not prepared for, that we don't know what they're going to create for us. And I think having that kind of agile, kind of automated environment that allow you to shift and change and move at the drop of a hat it's just going to be critical. And I see my private equity firms taking a more, aggressive approach to automation and to just digitizing, simple back office functions, reconciliations, and closing their books on a timely basis. Those are things that can be manually intensive and take a lot of time and cost a lot of money. And there are things that can be easily automated and streamlined. And I see them taking more aggressive routes to doing that. As value creation in private equity becomes more critical, right? They have to look at new ways to continue to move the needle for their investors.
And you are advisors to private equity, and both on value creation and technology. Do you notice that you have to change and shift how you serve them because they're shifting?
Yeah, we're finding that private equity has always been about speed. When we think about value creation in private equity, we bucket it into to money, time, and risk, right? And they're always looking for ways to make more money and to run more efficiently and save money on the operating side of things. But boy, the focus on time and getting things done quickly and moving fast and adjusting quickly to the environment, has really created a different level of urgency for us. I mean, we've had to react, much more quickly in order to remain competitive and to drive the kind of value that the clients are expecting. The focus on speed has been a real noticeable change.
Staying with private equity, so the large firms always had technologists and specialists focused on digital technology and enterprise tech, and a lot of the mid-market firms probably didn't so much. They may have focused on top-line growth and maybe cost efficiencies. Do you think that will change? Do you think there's more technology focus is going to emerge, especially in the mid-market private equity?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I mean, we focus on the mid-market predominantly, and we're taking advantage of technology solutions that heretofore have only been available to the Fortune 100 and the very large firms, and there's some very extensible technologies that are available today in the areas of like I said earlier, RPA and corporate performance management tools and data visualization tools, things that allow users, right, in a non-code environment to kind of analyze and utilize data in a decision support structure that's almost real time, where in the past that kind of availability was really only out there for the very large corporate environments, and now mid-market firms can take advantage of that kind of robust data environment and real-time analytics without having IT create some static report that's looking in the past.
So if you put your predictor hat on, do you think, looking at 2-3 years out, do you think private equity will shift in some ways coming out of this crisis and operate differently in the mid-market especially?
I really think they already have. I mean, I think that shift has started. I'm seeing private equity firms demand that that their portfolio companies be able to report on the business more effectively and to provide real-time analytics to support decisions that need to be made in order to drive the investment thesis. So I think what's going to change is again, I'm going to use speed again, but the speed at which that technology is adopted and driven to adoption by the private equity firms is going to continue to accelerate.
So let's go back to technology and you and I joke around. You were in RPA before there was RPA in many ways. So when you look at technologies, AI, machine learning, automation, what do you think is hyped too much? And maybe what are the parts of technologies that probably not leveraged enough?
I think the ones that you just mentioned, AI, machine learning, RPA, I don't think they're hyped enough. I think that there's still a lot of non-believers out there that you can really leverage this technology to drive the kind of automation and the kind of efficiency that I think is really out there. So I think they're not hyped enough. in my mind, and I might be a laggard in this area, but I think the technology that's hyped too much is blockchain. I think that I do believe that the premise of blockchain and having a single ledger out there for all users is nirvana. But to get there, I think the roadblocks of gathering that kind of consensus around user adoption is going to be awfully hard to get to. And it may, like I said, I may be a laggard here, but I think blockchain is overhyped, and I think we ought to focus on things that are more tangible, real, and attainable. Than that.
So what I like about you, Dave, is very pragmatic. You have a ton of experience in technology. So when you sit back and saying, I'm really excited about that technology or that technology, what would that be? What's on the horizon that says that's really intriguing?
Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, it's a combination of things, but I think on the top of the list has got to be, this kind of non-code data analytics capability. I mean, the ability to have a business user sit at his desk and access data from 4 or 5 different disparate systems and sources, and collate that in a way that allows him to analyze it and make decisions around that kind of thing without having to go to some sophisticated IT environment to pull that down I think it's game changing. And I think the combination of data analytics, process automation, and AI, really, you put those 3 things together, and all of a sudden it becomes a pretty powerful way to provide, true, data-driven automation and process improvement in a way that we've never been able to do before. This isn't about, sitting in a room and conducting interviews and posting sticky notes on a whiteboard. This is about real analytics and automation.
So in the crisis, we noticed that digital projects got a lot faster, and they elevated on the CEO agenda all of a sudden because they were crisis-related, help with business continuity. And the debate is, these will stay or not stay the same. Will digital projects now go back to multi-year transformations, and do they drop down from the CEO agenda back to the CIO agenda?
I don't think there's any chance of that happening. I think now that, I think with this crisis, just like with the remote workforce, right? I mean, you and I have both spent way too much time in airplanes and hotels and traveling the globe. And 3 years ago, we would have never thought that we could conduct business without that. Well, you know what? We can, right? And I think 3 years ago, CEOs didn't realize that they could get access to real, meaningful data without engaging a huge IT project to get there, and they could see immediate results from that effort. And I don't think that's ever going to turn back. Just like I don't think you and I are ever going to spend 222 nights in a Marriott again. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Hope not. Hope not. So speaking more about predictions, one of the things that I remember, you and I were both in ERP in the early days, and the promise of ERP was that things are going to be wall-to-wall automated, the business is going to be a lot more efficient, a lot leaner. And I actually look back the last 20, 30 years, and if you look at the SG&A line on average industry, it hasn't changed much. The cost base of an average company is still the same as it was 20 years ago. So the question is, where did all that cost efficiency go? So if we look at the next 2, 3, 4 years and we talk about automation and AI machine learning, do you think this time around Industry 4.0 will bring those cost efficiencies?
I do, and I think they're going to do that for the reasons we just talked about earlier. I think these are going to happen now. The efficiencies are going to come in bite-sized, consumable, portions, right? It's not going to be this big monolithic ERP, big bang approach to, all things business, right? There are point solutions that handle, aspects of the enterprise very, very well. ERP has a role to play, but there's a lot of, kind of connecting technologies. And I think the biggest thing that's happened is that, if you'll remember back in the day, the cost to integrate these applications was so great, and it took so much time to get there, and they were so rigid in terms of the integration points. that they were hardly usable, right? That's all gone away now with, well, like you said, with machine learning and AI and the ability to analyze data from multiple sources and collaborate. It doesn't take that rigid interaction, that interface development anymore. You can do that in a very streamlined and efficient way, and I don't think that's ever gone back. I think there's a role to play for ERP, but it's a much reduced role, and it's one that has a much different value proposition.
So I think the dialogues, I'm already noticing the dialogues with the boards and the executive suite changed. They want to learn from what happened in the crisis. They they like the speed of it. There's an adrenaline that got pumped into the American business and probably worldwide. So when you're advising PE firms and executives, what would you tell them to do more of or less of, learning from what happened in the last 6-7 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would focus more on the cultural aspect of being agile, creative, nimble, and then and when I say cultural aspect, I think that that mindset starts at the CEO level and it permeates down through the organization. It's basically the notion of be prepared. Be prepared for things that you are not even you're not even contemplating right now. Nobody contemplated this pandemic a year and a half ago. So but to be prepared now means to be digitally equipped, right, to change on a dime, to change your operating model, to change how your customers access your products, how you serve your customers, to change how you process invoices and move goods through your supply chain. You have to be able to turn on a dime. So many companies got caught, with supply chain issues out of China and other places where they all of a sudden they couldn't manufacture parts, not because they couldn't manufacture, but they couldn't get the raw goods, right? So you have to have some redundancy built into that. And, so you have to kind of think forward in ways you never had before, and you have to have an infrastructure, a culture and an infrastructure that supports that.
Let's make it a little personal as a sort of towards my final question is, we all going to change. I'm thinking about this every day. I work remotely. I have worked remotely quite a bit of time. You have, I know. How do you think your personal work is going to change as a result of what happened the last couple of months? What do you want to do more of? What do you like about the changes, and what are you trying to work back towards? I mean, are you excited to get back to the office? Are you excited to go back to on-premise consulting engagements, or you think some of what happened is actually going to serve you?
No, quite frankly, I had this conversation with a colleague earlier today. Actually, this has been. In a lot of cases, this has been such a significant disruption to life and living this for us as individuals as anything has ever been. But on the other hand, this has been it's been the perfect storm, right? I mean, if you think about when I was traveling and visiting clients and talking to them about the services we provide and the value we could create and all those type of things, I could maybe see 4, 5, 6 clients a week. I can see 10 clients a day. Talking to them the same way you and I are talking to now, and are talking about now, and the fact is, 2 years ago that wouldn't have been an acceptable mode of communication. Today it is. So for me, at being on the front end of advising clients and providing insights and perspective, I can talk to a whole heck of a lot more people now than I could beforehand, and I think I can have a broader impact on more people by using digital technology to facilitate those meaningful conversations. And I haven't seen a significant drop off. There was early. There was a little angst. Not everybody wanted to turn the cameras on and that type of thing. But now that we've gotten to a point where it's kind of the new normal, I think everybody feels comfortable. I can read your body language just like you can read mine, and I can talk to a client about what's on their shelf behind their desk and why it's meaningful and those types of things, just like I could if I was sitting next to them in an office.
Yeah, Dave, it's interesting. I'm hearing that a lot. I think on balance, I don't know, where are we? 4, 5, 6 months into this? I think most people believe this actually was probably net positive to business and not negative. I think the first couple of months were painful for everybody. And I think everybody learned from it. I think beyond the technology that we talked about, I think we as executives and just the workforce, I think there's a lot of benefits from the transition and what we learned. It was going back to business school one more time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's, it goes back to the old adage of everything happens for a reason, right? I think, a lot of the advancements in technology and a lot of the, the efficiencies that we're going to gain as an economy, that come out of this are going to, over time, or far outweigh the negative aspects of what this all created for us. Save the loss of life and the illness and all that. But from a business perspective, I think that that this is really going to be a net positive as we look back on this 4, 5, 10 years from now.
So let's end on that happy note. Dave, I want to thank you for joining me today. It was great seeing you and talking to you. And I think the virtual is the way to go.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. It was really fun to be on with you. Thank you.